Before you make anything for IMVU, you're going to need to download 4 files: Blender, Python, the sample file, and the export scripts. Now, because we're downloading a specific version of Blender, when you go to blender.org, click Download Older Versions, then the release schedule. Scroll down the page to 2.64. Click on the appropriate version for the Windows installation that you've got, whether that's 64-bit Windows or 32-bit Windows 8, Windows 7, and you want 2.64a. Similarly, python.org. Click on Download, Releases, 3.3. Scroll down the page and click the relative version that you need for your operating system, 64-bit or 32-bit. Note that with the latest versions of Blender, downloading and installing Python is optional, as Blender comes with the required Python files that it needs for exporting files out for IMVU. Then the sample file, catsbits.com, Tools, Metaverse, scroll down a little bit, Blender example file for making IMVU furniture items. And then finally the scripts, bitbucket.org, Jacob B IMVU_cal3d, downloads, and then IMVU cal3d 1.3.zip. Now don't worry if you didn't get all of that in the video, it will be in the text below. Once you've downloaded all the files, it's then a question of installing them. We won't be showing that in this video because there are too many variables in terms of operating system and various other things. So downloads. So just install as normal and follow the on-screen instructions and prompts that you're given by Blender and Python. And then make sure you know where the locations are for the zip files, for the template and the scripts. You can find that depending on where your browser saves them, clicking on Show in Folder or Open Download Folder depending on your browser again. Once Blender has installed, you should have an icon on your desktop. But let's go ahead and start Blender. So double click the icon. But this is the splash screen. To get rid of this, just click anywhere on screen and we'll have the main interface loaded and visible. So what we have are 3 or 4 main areas of Blender. There's the main header, which runs along the top. That provides us with all the file and scene information as we're working. We have a properties panel on the right, an animation sequence panel at the bottom, and the main 3D view in the center. Now the 3D view is where most of the work is done, and there's several ways that this can be navigated using your mouse keys and keyboard combinations. Middle mouse button, click, hold, and then drag the mouse across the screen. That rotates the scene, up, down, left, right. If you hold Shift while holding the middle mouse button down, that translates or strafes up, down, left, right. If you hold Control while holding the middle mouse button down, that zooms. Zoom is also possible by scrolling the middle mouse button up or down, but you might note that doing so isn't as smooth as using the Control key, the middle mouse button. Those are your main navigation keys for moving around the scene. For now, that's all we need to know. Everything else will be learned as we go. So let's load in the sample file. Click on File, Open and Browse. Left click a drive letter, then on a folder to expose its contents. To the location of the sample file, left click and open file in Blender. and you'll note that the interface changes slightly, but the main thing is the 3D view, which shows a couple of helper objects, a seated and a standing one, and a block that's already been textured and UV mapped with some armatures. Don't worry, we'll be explaining this as we go. If you want, you can save the file, save as, and either type a name, or if you want to override something, just click to select and then save as. Now the purpose of using the sample file is to save time, and so that we know that all the elements that are used in the scene are set up correctly, and all we have to worry about is modeling the item that we need, which is a simple settee or couch in this instance. Then we can use the seated and standing avatar to provide the seating spots for the avatars in IMVU. What we'll be doing is using the seated avatar as a guide around which we can then mold or mesh or make the chair from this simple block. So what we want to do first is position the seated avatar correctly relative to IMVU's grid so that it's centered, so when the chair itself is eventually exported and loaded into IMVU, it loads into the scene correctly positioned. So how do we do that? How do we move objects around in Blender? Well, first we select them using the right mouse button. And what we want to do is select two objects, which is the seated avatar armature, which are these grey things, and the mesh itself. So we need to hold the shift key down, right mouse click the armature, shift, right mouse click the avatar. Move around the scene so we can see what we're doing. And to move the objects, click one of the handles that you see on this red, green, blue widget. So left click, hold, drag, and that will move the object in a particular direction. If you hold the control key down whilst doing this, it will snap to increments. So do that and move the selection to the green line that's indicated on the grid. Then left mouse click release and then release control. Do the same thing again on the green arrow, left click hold, hold control down and drag back so that that little dot is on the intersection between the red line and the green line. So release the left mouse button and control. So we've got a green axis indicator and a red axis indicator, and they intersect where this small dot is. But for now what we've done is positioned the avatar helper in a way that's going to help us make the chair. So if you want to go ahead and save the file, save, version 2, enter, and then click save as. Next we want to move the mesh into position so that it's seated underneath the armature helper. So as with the seating helper and the armature, left click hold drag with the control key down and move that so that it's underneath the seated avatar. Release, and that's the basic position of the chair sorted out. What we need to do next is reshape the mesh around the avatar. The easiest way to do this initially is to just use the scale key. So if you press S with the cube selected, right mouse click, press S, we want to scale it along an axis. So either press X or Y, then there's Z, which will go up and down. So we want side to side, which is X, hold the control key down again to snap, scale the mesh outwards and left mouse click to confirm and set the position. And that gives us the width of the chair. What we want to do next is to go into edit mode and edit the mesh itself. So again, if you want to save the file before we do that step, file, save as, step 3. Saving the file frequently is a good habit to get into because it means that you have a restore point to go back to if you make a severe mistake or error during production. So to enter edit mode, with the cube selected, press the tab key and you'll note that the mesh changes its appearance slightly. It's highlighted, outlined by a series of lines with some tiny dots in the corner. These are vertexes, edges and faces. Now to make the chair, what we want to do is extrude some sides, the back, and then the arms and back of the chair. So to do this, the easiest way is to Control Tab, then select Face. You note that the little dots disappear, and that's because we're in Face Select mode. So if you right click on any one of these surfaces, it will individually select it. What we want to do next is extrude. So with the surface selected, press the E key, hold Control down, and move the mouse away from the cube. Left click to confirm. Do this on the other side. Select, E, hold Control and drag away. Left click to confirm. And along the back. Now we want to select more than one surface here, so hold the Shift key down and right mouse click. Then again E key to extrude. Hold Control. Left click to confirm. And then to create the arms and the back, right mouse, Shift right mouse, and then E to extrude. Hold the Control key down and move the mouse up, and then left click once you're happy with the height of the seat. And that, in a few steps, is our basic chair. So again, if you want to save before we go any further, File, Save As, 4. Enter, and then click the button again, Save As Blender File. So once that's done, the next thing to do is to texture the mesh. Now before we do that, we need to make sure that the scale of the object is uniform. So press the Tab key to exit edit mode. And what that means is that because we scaled the mesh when it was an object, it's not uniform. So we need to fix this by using Control A. Make sure the object is selected, right mouse click. Control A, select rotation and scale. And that will unify the scale of the object. Once that's done, press the Tab key. Go back into edit mode. Now, to UV edit the mesh, we can do one of two things. The simplest way is to select a number of surfaces and UV map them as groups like that. Or we can do it the complicated way, which is using seams. Now, because we want to see what we're doing here, it might be a good idea to move the lamp object out of the scene. Press the Tab key and exit edit mode. Manipulate your way around the scene so that you can see the lamp object. Press the M key and then click one of the little buttons. Do the same with the other lamp. Press M and one of the buttons again. Move the mouse away from the dialog to close the layers window, and that will make the scene flat lit, allowing us to see what we're doing much more clearly. Right mouse click to select the mesh, press Tab, enter edit mode, and go ahead and select, with the Shift key held down again, remember, multi-select, the side faces. Press the U key and unwrap. Rotate around to do the same on the back. Right mouse click Shift. Press the U key. Right mouse click Select, Shift. Press the U key. And for the front, we can right mouse Shift and then U again for the top, right mouse shift, and again. Now for the inside we can either do it as one selection, or we can do each side individually depending on what we are wanting to do. So let's do it as a group. So right mouse shift, right mouse, and press the U key, unwrap. And that is the main body of the chair done. Rotate to the bottom and just select the bottom section. Same again, U, unwrap. And that is your chair basically unwrapped and textured. So once again, save the file so we've got a point to revert back to if there are problems. So File, Save As, 5, Enter, and Save as Blender file. Now the next bit is to set up the mesh so that it works in IMVU, and this means making use of the armatures that we were seeing. Now we need to do two things. I'm just going to go into wireframe mode, which is the Z key, or we can click the viewport shading box. We've got two aspects to this. Let's press the tab key to exit edit mode so these can be selected. The avatar armature will be joined physically to the seat armature, but the seat mesh will be linked to the armature. That's because the two are different objects and they can't be physically connected together. So before we do this, let's just save the file again so that we've got a point that we can refer back to. Save as 6. Enter and save as file. As we've got the armature selected, let's go ahead and join the two of them together. So that's the avatar armature and the seat armature. So select the avatar armature first, and you can rotate around the screen so that you can get a better view of what you're looking at, and then shift right mouse select the seat armature. Now the order in which these are selected is important. The seat armature should be selected last, which means it will highlight in a slightly brighter orange. Once that's done, to join them together, Control J. So the entire armature will then change to the single highlighted orange. What we then need to do is edit the armature and change the relationships between the bones. So with the armature selected, press the tab key. Their appearance may change, and as with other objects, you can right mouse select them or shift right mouse select. But note that bones can be selected in several ways. You can select the spheres at either end and the bone itself, the middle section. So the middle section is the main body of the bone, and then there's the head and tail of the bone. Be aware of that when selecting and manipulating the bone, so you don't want to be accidentally selecting that area and changing the shape of the bone accidentally. Make sure that you select, right click the main body of the bone. So what we need to do is change the relationship, and we can do this quickly by using the OOPS or outliner scheme. Highlighted is the armature. Left click the plus button, and then we can see all the bones that are involved in this armature. You can change the views or expand the views by holding the mouse over the border, left click, hold and drag, left click, hold and drag. What we need is the body to be parented to the root, and then each of the seat elements to be parented to the root. So we do that by selecting an item, left click, going into bone properties, and scrolling down we have the parent subsection. Click the bone list and select root from the available entries. Do this again for each of the bones to set up the proper parenting relationship. What we then also need to do is change the name. The quickest way to do this is hold the control key down and left click one of the entries, and that will automatically highlight for editing. Left click as you would normally, backspace or delete, change that to 1. Same again, 1, left click, control click, 1, control left click, 1. We can leave everything as is. And that's basically the armature set up. The relationships are created, and all we need to do now is parent the mesh to the armature. So tab out of editing the armature, and before we go any further, save another version. File, save as, version 7. Now to parent the mesh to the armature, again the selection order is important. Right mouse click the mesh, shift right mouse click the armature, and then press Ctrl P. Now we get several options here. Just select Object, and then right mouse select the mesh, and over in the Properties section click the Object Modifiers button, add modifiers, and then select Armature. Now the object we want this to link to is listed as Furniture Rig, so select that. This means that when we select the armature and move it, because the mesh and the avatar helper are parented to the armature, they move with the armature. Now there's one more step to go. Select the mesh, tab into edit mode, press A to deselect, A to select again, and in object properties we need to create a vertex group. So click the plus button, a group is created, rename this root, enter, and then left click assign. The name is important because this name relates to the bone of the armature which controls the entire furniture item. It's case sensitive, which means a lowercase r and an uppercase t wouldn't work. So make sure that the case is correct relative to the bone that you are linking to. We can test this by clicking the deselect button, select, deselect, and then tab out. That's the armature and chair mesh set up so that they're parented with the proper relationship, ready for IMVU. So once again, save a copy of the file. One final step before we get this ready to export to IMVU is to apply smoothing. So with the mesh selected, right mouse click, click solid. The shortcut key for that is Z, and over in the tool panel on the left here, click smooth. You'll note that the mesh goes all mushy. To fix this, we will add a modifier, another one, and this time edge split. And what this does is it splits the mesh along hard edges. You can change the parameters so that it uses an angle value or an edge that's marked as sharp. For a simple chair like this, we can just leave it at the defaults. This makes sure that when the mesh is brought into IMVU that it doesn't look mushy, because the property has been assigned to the mesh in Blender before export. With that done to the mesh, one final step for the armature is select, press Ctrl Tab. This changes us into pose mode. Press the A key to remove any selections, A key again to reselect, and then press the I key to insert a keyframe. Select Lock Rot. Now to see this, in the bottom section here, click the timeline icon, select Dope Sheet. When that's open, click on Dope Sheet and select Action Editor. And this reveals the keyframes that have been assigned to each of the armature bones. This is essential for exporting objects from IMVU. So once that's done, Control Tab to exit pose mode, and then once again another save, and then we're almost ready to export. Now before the items can be exported from IMVU, we need to load in the export script. Easiest way to do that is File, User Preferences, click Add-ons, Install Add-on, and then select the zip file from the location that it was saved to. You can find the location by browsing your hard drives, folders, and then the folder contents in this main area. Simply select the file, click Install, and it will add it to the list. Now in this instance we've already got a version of the file listed, so it gives us this error. But what will happen is a listing will appear. To activate, simply click the little checkbox in the top right there, and then either save as default if you want to save this so that it's available every time you open Blender, or just close the view and it will be ready for use. Now to export the files, the selection order again is important. Right mouse select the chair, then the armature, and then simply File, Export, Export Cal3D. This will open the file save view. Scroll down on the left here. We need to export an XSF, the skeleton, XMF, the mesh, XAF, an animation. We do not need XPF, and we do need XRF, which are the materials. We don't need right scene ambient, and frame rate can be left as is. Once selected, just save the file. And that's it. So once that's exported, if we then open up Windows Explorer, what we will have is a series of files: XMF, XRF, XSF and XAF. The important ones really are the XMF, XRF and XSF. These are the ones that will be loaded into IMVU to build the item. So that's what we'll do next. So once you've logged in as normal into IMVU, click on the Create button to open Create mode, then Derive New Product, Rooms and Furniture, Furniture. This opens the chair, so click Go. And all we're effectively doing is replacing the defaults that come with the chair itself with our exported material. So, first things first, let's replace the mesh. Browse to the location where your files are saved. Select the mesh. Apply the changes, and already we've got our chair half made. Click on Config, add XSF, select our skeleton, Click apply, and you'll find that we can sit in that, and then finally go back to meshes, and we want to replace the materials, so add XRF, then add our texture, select, open, and assign. And that is our basic chair in IMVU. The next thing to do would be to save the file and upload once you have all your artwork and images set up and sorted out. And there you have it, a simple couch chair made and exported from Blender into IMVU and then uploaded to the catalogue for everybody to use.